Company security guard showed up at my office. "Mr. White," one said. I looked up from my desk and froze. "Are you Tom White?" he repeated. Yes, I said, a little anxious now. "We'd like you to come with us, please, sir." Now I felt nauseous. Let me take a step back and tell you how we got here. I was a young marketing executive at Lockheed, before they were Lockheed Martin and when they were in Burbank. I'd been there about 5 years, and in that time I'd experienced more than my share of successes marketing Lockheed aircraft for airborne early warning and control, anti-submarine warfare, high-altitude surveillance, the list goes on. I founded the promotion department there at Lockheed. I was an innovator. I had no predecessor, no legacy. I took chances wherever I went and whenever I could to hit a goal. It's like Kobe Bryant taking some 30,000 shots over the course of his career to hit goals. That's what each one of those little dots are on that screen. He took shots from wherever he was on the court, whenever he could, to hit a goal. But every shot is different. Well, every one of my successes were different, but each one was met with resistance by those who feared change before they became a success. And now, 2 security guards are taking me away. I'm pretty sure I'm in trouble for doing something wrong. They put me outside in a security van and they drove me from my office at the Burbank airport to an old deserted industrial building at the far corner of one of the runways. Inside, they walked me into a large darkened storage room that was home to some old oil drums and now me. They left and I waited alone. Eventually, one by one, 9 other people were walked into the room exactly as I was, with the same look of confusion and concern on their faces that I knew I had on mine. You know, there's a British study that says that on average, a normal adult breaks about 260 rules per year, big and small. And as I stood there with these people waiting silently, I was wondering to myself, of all the rules I broke in achieving successes, which one of them were responsible for bringing me here with these people and these oil drums? Well, I was soon to learn when 2 other men entered the room. One held an armful of folders and a fistful of pens, which he distributed to each of us. And he said, "These are your applications for a top secret security clearance. We'd like you to fill them out. The company's starting a new program and you're going to be part of it." You know, this is like being called into the principal's office and you're feeling sick to your stomach because you're going to get in trouble for something and it turns out you're winning an award. I wasn't being called there because I was in trouble for breaking rules. I was being recognized by someone for my ability to break barriers. The project turned out to be a proposal. Lockheed was going to compete against Northrop for the F-22 Advanced Tactical Fighter. This was an aircraft unlike anything that had ever existed before. And at stake was a $70 billion contract, which was the biggest contract in history at that time. I was one of the first 10 people on this project, and by the time we were finished, 4 years later, and submitted this proposal to the Air Force, on time by the way, there were hundreds of engineers, managers, and coordinators from the Lockheed, Boeing, and General Dynamics team working in my building alone, and many more across the country. I was the first marketer ever asked by Lockheed to help lead such a proposal as this, and in my role as marketing manager, I was responsible for convincing the world publicly that the Lockheed solution was the only possible choice, that there was no competition. So between the proposal and the marketing, everything the world saw or heard about this aircraft would be my responsibility, which is an amazing opportunity for a young marketer, but there's only one small catch. The plane is classified top secret and we can't show it and we can't say a word about it. And because it's a $70 billion contract, the future of the company is dependent upon winning it. Throughout the 1970s, there was an unprecedented buildup in Soviet military spending. The Air Force had identified a credible threat that the Russians and the Chinese were building advanced fighter jets. So in the 80s, they created the Advanced Tactical Fighter Program to counter this threat. In order to be able to win this contract, we had to demonstrate that we were capable of delivering advanced aircraft to the Air Force. Northrop could do this because they had just launched the B-2 bomber. This was a flying wing. It used all the latest technology, and everyone knew about it. But Lockheed couldn't show anything more recent than an aircraft that developed in World War II. So what do you do when a 50-year-old aircraft is all you can show to prove that you can deliver a $70 billion advanced fighter jet today? What do you do? Well, when you can't meet the customer's requirements and you can't win according to their rules, what you simply have to do is change the conversation, and that's what we did. We decided to break a barrier and connect directly with the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. He was the ultimate decision maker. So this was a different approach, and it was a $70 billion risk that we took. As the storyteller, it was my responsibility to create a vision that the Chief of Staff, and because of the Chief, everyone else in the Air Force would love and become excited about, and one that would make us the undisputed winner. To do this, I needed a believable spokesman and an unbelievable aircraft. Lockheed had developed the legendary P-38 Lightning. It was iconic. It was unlike any aircraft anyone had ever seen. 20,000 feet and 400 knots. Lockheed built more than 10,000 of these during just a 3-year period in World War II for the Air Force. So now, we're able to show this legendary aircraft, but it's 50 years old. Can we prove that a 50-year-old aircraft makes us capable of winning this $70 billion contract today? How do you do that? Well, what we did was tell a story, and that was my job. In the process of telling this story of the legendary P-38, I discovered that there was one P-38 Lightning in particular, with one particular pilot. Dick Bong was the ace of aces of World War II. He flew more than 200 combat missions, and he had more air victories than any other pilot ever. Dick Bong flew his P-38 Lightning with a picture of his wife Marge on the nose. He was recognized and revered by everyone in the Air Force, and he was a true American hero. So we contacted the Dick Bong family and asked for their permission to use his likeness as part of our program, and they agreed. The deceased Dick Bong would be our believable spokesman. For the unbelievable aircraft, you remember the vehicles in Star Trek and Aliens, Blade Runner and Tron? Who remembers those? They were amazing. I wanted us to be able to show a jet that had that kind of excitement about it. So I contacted Sid Mead. Sid had designed all the vehicles in all of those movies. Sid is a genius. But our plane's classified top secret, so he can't draw that. So I went to our engineers, and I asked them to draw me the opposite of what our classified plane looked like, and I submitted that drawing to the Air Force. And they agreed, they approved. Sid Mead rendered our fictitious F-22. The fictitious jet created excitement and a new buzz in the industry. Everyone who saw it loved it. The response was unbelievable. And in absence of any other imagery from Northrop, the Lockheed F-22 became the only face of the advanced tactical fighter to the industry, with no competition. We brought it to life. To bring Dick Bong to life, I created a feature film, a short feature film about an 11-year-old boy who longs to be a great fighter pilot. He's visited in his dreams by Dick Bong, who lands his P-38 Lightning with a picture of his wife Marge on the nose in the boy's front yard. Dick Bong has a Zen conversation with the boy sitting at his bedside, where he tells the boy the secret of what it takes to be a great fighter pilot. He says, planes don't make great fighters, but heroes make great aircraft because of the courage they bring with them. We were going to show the spirit of flight to the Chief of Staff and others at the annual Air Force Association convention in Washington, D.C. Northrop would be presenting right alongside us. So now we have a competition between two stories. Northrop promising a top secret fighter jet that could virtually fly itself, and Lockheed actually showing an amazing aircraft with the ghost of Dick Bong reminding the Air Force that we know as well as they do that it's the courage of the pilot that makes a great fighter jet. But 2 weeks before the convention in Washington, D.C., I got a call from the head of the Lockheed program, who asked me to set up a screening of the spirit of flight for mid-level Air Force management, which I did. At the end of the screening, when the lights came up in the theater, instead of the expected, anticipated applause, there was dead silence, followed by murmuring in the front row of the theater between the Lockheed and Air Force teams. When the murmuring was finished, the head of the program stood up, turned to the back of the theater where I was standing, pointed at me, and said, "Mr. White, we need to find another movie. We would rather show a Bugs Bunny cartoon to the chief than to show this film." Great. So I spent every day of the next 2 weeks lobbying with every member of the senior Lockheed decision-making team, helping them understand scene by scene why this movie would work. They agreed. Now we're ready to break a barrier. The day of our presentation in Washington, D.C. has arrived. Bomb-sniffing dogs came in the morning through our exhibit and through our surround sound theater. I was working with the exhibit team on final details. Our exhibit looked like an Air Force theme park, by the way. And we're ready to break a barrier. I'm feeling good. That night, the guests arrived. Lockheed executives in formal wear, senior Air Force brass in full dress regalia. Executives from all the other aerospace companies were in attendance that night, as are their spouses. At the appointed time, the chief and his entourage are escorted into our specially designed surround sound theater, and the doors close. 12 minutes later, the doors open, and no one's coming out. Now, the audience awaiting the chief are silent, and I'm suddenly petrified. I'm remembering the reaction of mid-level Air Force management just 2 weeks before, and I realize the moment we see the expression on the chief's face when he walks out of that theater, we're going to know whether our approach had worked. We're going to know whether our story had connected with him and whether we had broken a barrier. We're going to know if we won this contract. The chief emerged from the theater with tears streaming down his cheeks, and he walked processionally out of the theater and through the crowd, which parted as he approached Lockheed Chairman Dan Telep, and the chief reached out and grabbed the chairman's hands with both of his and said, "You've captured the spirit of this program." Thank goodness. Champagne and laughter flowed all around. Until that moment, the aircraft had lived only in the top secret technical, tactical world of a proposal. But now, the chief, and because of the chief, everyone in the Air Force knew that we were creating a legendary aircraft designed for heroes, and they loved it. We had changed the conversation. Lockheed won the $70 billion contract. They bought their partner General Dynamics, and they merged with Martin Marietta to become Lockheed Martin, the largest aerospace contractor on Earth. Because they won the F-22 competition, that enabled them to win the F-35 multi-role fighter jet contract, which is valued at $1.5 trillion. A little gasp from the audience. And the Air Force named it the Lightning II. I had done what Lockheed asked me to do, and that is to break a barrier, to change the conversation, and win. And I met with the same resistance that I had met with every other change, every other barrier I had broken at Lockheed. And this is not unusual. Lockheed is more open than others in embracing innovation. But there are 5 basic truths in breaking any barrier, and I'd like to share those with you now, and I hope you can take them away with you. Rule number 1, proceed with caution. Every barrier was created by someone for a reason, so determine which of those barriers can be broken and which need to be preserved, otherwise you'll meet with failure. Number 2, heap authentic praise on the person who created that barrier before you annihilate it. Number 3, when you're ready to break a barrier, do it with a story. Diligently do your homework, because it's in your research that you're going to find the content for your story and the substance of your characters. Number 4, embrace the resistance. It's going to happen. As a barrier breaker, you need to be responsible for helping those who fear change embrace a new way of doing things. And finally, number 5, when someone shows up at your door, someone you least expect probably, and asks you to help break a barrier, say yes, and eventually you'll develop a reputation for this. Well, that's it. If you follow these 5 simple steps, you will break barriers, you will go to places you've never been before, you will achieve successes you never could have imagined, and you'll change the way people think forever. Thank you.